A quorum is present. For the record, the following board members are present: Matt Atkins, Jacob Day, Mitch Herzog, Bill Howard, Heather Leggett, Kylie Rising, and myself, Stacy Smith. The purpose of this meeting has been posted according to the requirements of Section 551 of the Texas Government Code. Welcome to our visitors and special guests. We appreciate you being here. And at this time, I would like to ask Dr. Benson to please introduce our special guests who will present the Board Finance Workshop for us this evening. Thank you to both Dr. Moses and Dr. Thompson for being here.
Well, you're going to enjoy this, guys. Never before have we had an opportunity to kind of learn from this level of instruction and process. And, you know, I always tell you guys that what I learned in school leadership, I learned from Dr. Moses. And, you know, you guys have had a chance to work with him. And so Dr. Moses is here tonight to introduce David Thompson and work and interact with you guys about, you know, one of the big questions that you've had is about school finance, tax rate, impacts of the tax rate, and the like as it relates to our revenues and expenditures. So I'm just going to introduce Dr. Moses and let him introduce Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, David. Good evening. President Smith, trustees, it's good to be with you. Trustee Atkins has asked me to keep my comments to about 45 minutes. David Thompson has been the General Counsel for the Texas Association of School Boards. He's been the General Counsel for the Texas Education Agency. He was asked to join the Bracewell and Patterson law firm in the early 1990s, which he did. He was a member of that law firm for a long time, and then it became Bracewell and Giuliani, and then David and another lady by the name of Janet Horton started their own firm, Thompson and Horton, well over a decade ago, and it has become the premier firm for representing school districts, or at least in my opinion, in education in Texas. David's firm represents primarily public education, public schools, but also higher education, colleges and universities, and anybody in the education space. For those who follow school finance, it would be very difficult to do that and not know David Thompson. I tell audiences that David is the attorney who last successfully argued and won Supreme Court cases in school finance in front of the Texas Supreme Court. Now he had bad expert witness, but he overcame that and was able to still prevail. But he has been remarkable in representing boys and girls school districts in Texas, and I don't think, and I think you'll agree by the time we're through this evening, that his knowledge of the current finance system, our tax system, and the way it works is unparalleled. I will tell you that when I was commissioner, and then after I was commissioner, at the end of each legislative session, I would be amused because they would always say, get David Thompson in here so we can find out if we're fixing to make a mistake and do anything we shouldn't do. And it was always kind of amusing to see them get David. But I've been privileged to work with David for over 20 years. We laughingly say that we're on a mission to eat at every Whataburger in Texas together, and we've put a pretty good dent in a lot of them. But I will contribute where I think I can tonight. But on the subject that you're considering this evening, I think you're very fortunate to have the state's expert in school finance. So welcome, David Thompson. David.
And things of that nature. And you'll also note you're not in this category yet, but I will tell you you're moving toward this category as you continue to grow. We have 150 or more districts in the state that actually pay recapture. They actually raise local tax dollars that don't stay in the community. They go back to the state in the form of recapture. That number this year is going to be close to $3 billion. The slide says 2.8. I think it's probably going to come in a little bit higher than that. So that's kind of a quick overview. It's a complicated system. Our Supreme Court described it as Byzantine, and But I don't believe it's not incapable of being understood. Generally speaking, in the state of Texas, when I do that calculation, if my taxable value per weighted student is a small number, then I'm not going to be able to generate very much. It doesn't matter how high I raise my tax rate. A high tax rate against a low value just isn't going to generate much money. So I can't cover very much of my foundation school program out of local property taxes. So I cover just a little bit of it, and the state fills the rest of my glass with state funds. If I'm a little wealthier in terms of weighted students, I can fill a little bit more of the glass locally. The state doesn't put in as much money to fill the glass. If I'm a very wealthy community, I not only fill the whole glass with local tax revenue, it actually overflows. The part that overflows is what is known in our system as recapture or Robin Hood. And those are actually local tax dollars that your community, people wrote their tax bill to the district, but a district that is in recapture winds up having to send back to the state. And what does the state do with that money? Remember that nearly $3 billion number, and that's an annual number, by the way. Districts, in theory, have to have a vote locally and agree to pay recapture, because there is a provision of our Constitution, Article 7, Section 3, that authorizes the levy of a property tax for the further maintenance and support of the public schools within the district. And so it actually takes every district that's paying recapture had to have a local vote and authorize paying recapture. And if they don't approve it, the state is actually required, TEA is required to start detaching property from that district and annexing it to other districts until they bring your wealth down. And so our Supreme Court basically said, our Supreme Court said that because the district chose that option over other options, even if it's not a very desirable option, it's not a state property tax. One, because not everybody does it. There is variation between districts. And two, because it was a local decision to choose to do it. So that's the legal rationale.
But at the end of the day, it's a local decision, but you really have no choice.
You don't have any good options.
So like Plano gives $160, $170 million back and gets nothing. We get about 25 cents of every dollar. So when they always compare us to a city, the city keeps every dollar that they want, that they have. If we could do that, we would lose about $13 million.
Just to kind of keep math simple, and this may be a question for Scott. When taxpayers get their bill and see Wylie ISD, and I'm just going to say $4,000, okay, how much stays in Wylie ISD?
It would depend on how much your values grew in a particular year as to whether your state share went up or down.
Heather, when we looked at it for the last biennium, we showed a bucket. And we showed at the bottom of the bucket was Plano because they didn't get any of the money. And then we showed a hole at 1/4 of the way up at 25 cents, and we kept about 25 cents of that, and then the rest went back to then they reduced that much effort on their tax on the legislative the state effort, and so that's where it was.
So about 1,000.
Yeah,
out
so
of that 4,000.
When you look at where it is, I mean, and then as you say, as we grow up in property growth, value growth, it's going to be zero, and then we'll be paying. And so,
If
Ms.
your
Riggs?
growth of students ever starts to slow down, your growth of value, if your growth of value overtakes your growth of students, then your wealth per student is going to start jumping pretty quickly, and it's going to really get painful.
Mr. Thompson, regarding back to the recapture, since we pay a significant portion of recapture, and you said that it all doesn't stay in education, what percentage would you guess still stays in education?
Well, if you look at what the state does, the state's like all of us with our own budgets. There's the revenue side, and then there's the expenditure side. For the state, these recapture dollars go into general revenue. That's kind of the state's largest unobligated fund that they fund a lot of programs out of. If they don't raise the basic allotment, then all the state will be putting money into is to fund growth. And so the state might put a little dollars into funding student growth, but the state's share might continue to go down overall. But those dollars, if you look at the drivers, the state could put money directly into salaries. They could say to every district, we're going to give you money to raise teacher salaries $2,000. We've done those kind of things in the past, but in our formulas, really raising the basic allotment is the key driver that every other formula is kind of built on. So if they want to plow some of those dollars back into education, that's the number they need to be looking at.
Madam President, we've got about 15 minutes for executive session.
So the